right? Well, we started off the morning with panic in the markets, but that doesn't affect us really, not the little guy. But what does affect us is Doge and what's going on there. And our friend I Am for I Am has an idea to bring in the next department, the Department of PURGE. So we'll be right back with I Am for I Am right after this. Give us a like and share the video. Oh, wise and wonderful Emperor of Den.social. How are you today?
I'm feeling wise and wonderful.
Good.
You spoke it into existence.
That's great. That's great.
I'm doing well. How about you, Lisa?
I'm good. We're having the weather's warming up, and I've really been looking into some things that I'm pretty excited about, and they are cracking down on child molesters.
Yes.
They made another huge bust, and I've been tweeting about that and sharing that information. And I'll go into that maybe at the end of the show if we have time. But I kind of put some things together that that I think are really happening that we're just not seeing in the media, but it's happening. You just have to go out there and find it. Go on the Department of Justice website, follow their even their YouTube. There's things happening. So
wow,
it's pretty exciting.
Hey, if they can lock them up now, in my opinion, I have a little bit different take. Mao eliminated in his country like the problem with the opium by just allowing a private in the military to be judge and jury and executioner, and they just killed him. And I believe that the theft of innocence is, in my personal opinion, is something that should, you're essentially taking a life.
Absolutely.
And I have no problem with if they, put the death penalty towards that.
Actually, Oklahoma has a bill active right now for the death penalty for child abuse, sexual child abuse. And I can't remember if it was Idaho or Indiana just passed that law. So there is some common sense coming together to protect children, thankfully.
Hopefully. Long overdue.
Yeah, I'm all for the quick trial on that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But
what are some other ways we could be efficient?
Well, Lisa, I kind of have a big ego, and this library behind me is just not big enough. I probably should move into the, maybe the Library of Congress would be big enough. My head gets just so big with my ego that I have to drive a convertible, and such a large head and everything. And so anyway, I had one of the ego trips the other day, and I was thinking, golly, man, Elon's getting all this attention on Tesla because he owns Tesla and he's doing Doge, and he took a Doge, the crypto, and made it into a federal government agency. I mean, that's like some brass, you know what? And I'm thinking, man, my ego's bigger than Elon's. I want to create a department in the federal government. And you know what? I don't have Teslas, and I don't have like a Tesla company. I don't have a SpaceX company, and I don't have an internet company or this kind of thing. But I am an emperor of Den.social. So I thought, shoot, yeah, I could hang with that. I should start my own giant, department. But I would call mine Purge, not Doge. So see, I've already beat him by adding an extra letter to mine. Mine would be a 5-letter agency. His is only 4 letters. So just because my ego needs that stroke every once in a while.
So what would Purge stand for?
Yeah. It would be and thanks Elon for helping me with this Grok image creation.
Oh,
Got to
nice.
give credit to Elon, right? But PURGE stands for purge useless and repressive government excess. So
Nice.
don't just cut it, because see, he's just doing these cuts, and I'm going to go in and purge a department. That's what I'm going to do. See, I can upstage him with that. That's my
You're
plan.
not there just to trim the fat. You're there to
No, just
cut the whole leg off.
my neighbor the other day, he was trimming his tree, and he's up there on a ladder and that kind of thing. And I walked over there to him and I said, "What are you doing, Donnie?" And he says, "Well, I'm trimming these limbs because they're kind of starting to hang down over the driveway. And next thing you know, they're going to scratch my car." And I go, "Well, why don't you just do one trim right at the base? Boom, you're done."
That sounds like my husband.
And I said, "Well, I'm a problem solver. That's what I do."
Yeah.
Offering advice to a neighbor. He didn't accept my advice, though. So maybe I'll take matters in my own hands and go over there with the chainsaw. What do you think, Lisa?
I mean, you are the emperor, so I would
That's
defer
right.
to you.
And I even got a letter that's a note here that says I can steal your stuff.
That's right.
Just
So
make an addendum. I can cut your tree.
every tree you see
That's right.
is up to you.
So anyway, no, seriously, I kind of got this idea like we're just not cutting enough. So I started digging in more into the federal budget and all the money we're spending on interest payments and how much will we have to cut just to break even.
Mm.
Doge going that quickly about it. Are we going to see this kind of revenue or new revenue income from tariffs? Forget the argument of good or tariffs are good or bad. Just let's not even talk about that yet. Let's just assume that they're good and that we're going to receive additional revenue from all these tariffs. And how much would that be? And I was asking, AI as estimate, and then I was asking AI to provide me some economists that would tell me how much. And so I threw in that number, and we're just not even close. We're just not close enough. And because it's not just balancing the budget, because so much money is going towards interest payments, we have to start whittling down the debt so that that interest payment also might come down as well. So how much would, and it's like, this Doge just doesn't go far enough.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, they're talking about cutting millions, and we have billions, and we have trillions of debt. Right?
That's right. That's right. And I got an analogy tonight to show everybody, kind of like as if it were a household budget, what we're doing.
Okay, great.
And kind of a neat different way of looking at it. So without any further ado, Lisa, let's jump into this. Let's see here. I'm going to start with the substitution. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, here you go. I'm going to argue that the state equals coercion. So if it equals coercion, we're going to have to purge that which is coercive. And Max Weber, a philosopher, said, the state has a monopoly on violence. It's the only entity that can legally use force against you.
This is so true.
And I couldn't remember what and when I read this again today, it made me think of the IRS, and I couldn't remember, Lisa, what their logo looked like. And I saw this one where the guy with the black sunglasses and the black hat, and it says Black IRS. Kind of looks like a gangster, but then there was the blue and white one, kind of with the little birdie and the IRS. I couldn't remember which was which, so I just put both of them up here because
that works.
One of them is a gangster. I think one of them is, or maybe both. I don't know. And then the little A there with the 3. Well, that stands for agorism. So every slide you see in that little A, well, if you're wondering how to solve it, boom, there's your answers right there in the little corner. But then Mikhail Bakunin said the state is the most cynical negation of humanity. It exists to control, not liberate. It exists to control, not liberate. And I really like that. And, he's a fellow agorist. And I have to agree with that. And I got this image of the gentleman, holding the bars and the doves outside of the bar. And, he's kind of, well, he hasn't been liberated yet. So then you got to think of, okay, well, wait a minute, coercive. Well, there's also the violation of rights. And John Locke argued that government should only protect our natural rights, like life, liberty, and property. And that's where we get that in our U.S. Constitution later. The founding fathers, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But before it was happiness, the original draft was property. Mm-hmm. And that really comes directly from John Locke, arguing that that's the only reason for government to exist. So if we're going to go down that path, that's saying that it's there to protect our natural rights, our God-given rights, our inalienable rights, the rights we're born with, if you're not a believer. But there you go. Now, Ayn Rand called this evil. She said the state sacrifices the individual for the greater good. And I like, the parentheses, the greater good. So, all the thievery and the ugliness of government, well, that's for the greater good. We're going to start a war. Well, that's for the greater good. We got to take your money. Well, that's for the greater good. It goes on and on and on, and all this justification for the state. But then you think about the historical abuses. Well, wait a minute. We got coercion, we got violence, and is there evidence of this? Well, of course there is. Know your history and know that wars were fought for unjust reasons. Know your history and know that JFK was taken out by your own government. Now, some say, well, that's a conspiracy. But I'm not, think of all the veterans out there who are suffering from their service in maybe an unjust, a war that wasn't necessary. Let's call Iraq. Some might disagree with me. Or let's call Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Gulf of Tonkin incident comes to mind. But
even ones that didn't go to war, but that were used as guinea pigs and tested on. I know my dad had lung damage because of, and possibly the cause of his lymphoma was because he was in New Mexico for those. You're going to start hearing about atomic veterans, which was in the 2017 NDAA that I read to everybody.
Wow. Yep. I remember that.
Yeah.
And well, it's, my wife is one of those who is was diagnosed with cancer, and the root of that was thought to be from her service in Iraq. Wow. So, my family is paying the price for that. And countless families are paying the price for that. And was the war justified? And all the questions that persist with, that are ongoing with that as the more we learn and more we know. So just one example, or those are a couple examples. Here's other ones. How about state enforced slavery, segregation, internment camps, biological weapons, MK Ultra? How about the propaganda that they force feed the news media and the legacy media, and the people are taking this hook, line, and sinker and believing it? The atrocities by the CIA all around the world. And when you travel abroad as an American, it actually becomes a point of, now, are you a target because of the way we've acted in the past? Gulf of Tonkin, like I mentioned. How about the USS Liberty? How about the Tuskegee studies, some of which you were talking about too, Lisa? But there's countless others, It goes,
well, and the MK Ultra that you mentioned, they just released those MK Ultra files the same day that they released the JFK files, and not a word about it, not a word about the satanic cults and what the army was doing to children and all of that. Look up the Presidio in San Francisco and Michael Aquino. Evil. Look it all up.
Evil.
Evil.
And that's where I'm that's essentially where I'm going here is like the cuts are not enough. We need to change it and elevate it from Doge to Purge is what I'm suggesting here. But the daily abuses are continuing. So it's not just abuses from the past, it's daily abuses. How about the NSA? How about the seizing of property by the DOJ? How about a traffic stop and you have, I don't know, $12,000 cash on you because you're going to go buy a piece of equipment. Maybe you're a farmer. You're going to go buy a piece of used equipment. Well, they seize that from you because why? Oh, well, that could be drug related money. Where did you get it? And now it becomes a fight to get your money back. How about the lawfare? You and I, Lisa, and many of us out there that are watching this know of a lot of cases of this, some of which we don't know the individuals personally, but we've watched it happen right before our eyes. How about, what Trump went through lawfare, trying to steal the election from him? How about Roger Ver? His whole adult life practically was lawfare. Joe Rotes, our friend with Dragon Chain, the founder of Dragon Chain, lawfare case from the SEC. So it's various agencies. It's not just
What they
one
did to
department.
Reggie Middleton,
That's the other one.
his personal assets.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this is not just past abuses or past historical abuses or past historical wars or rumors of wars. This is ongoing. It is continuous. And I argue that it's the Intel superstate. Where I'm going to go next? Where's the list? Where's the Epstein list? What about, the right, like, we fought the Revolutionary War and we wanted the Bill of Rights because we wanted protection, that we didn't want illegal search and seizures. Well, I would argue that the Patriot Act is not patriotic at all.
Right.
It's an illegal search. And like I said, the Epstein list, we haven't seen that yet. It just continues. So that brings us to the US federal budget and the ongoing deficit. This is more than just abuse, it's immoral. And here's our family analogy. Lisa, let's just say that I'm a school teacher and I've got a spending problem, Lisa. I like my tea, but I like it really imported tea. It's got to be just at the right temperature. So, maybe I hire somebody to help me make my tea. But I only make $53,000 a year, but I'm spending $70,000 a year. So I'm overspending what I make by $17,000 every year. Now, let's just say that I know somebody at the IRS. Again, remember, I don't remember what their symbol looks like, but let's just say I know somebody at the IRS. And so even though I make $53,000 a year, I don't have to pay any taxes, but I'm still overspending by $17,000. Now, my credit card debt happens to be $362,000. That's a lot of money. Now, we're not talking about a home mortgage or anything. We're just talking about credit card debt.
Yes.
So I'm making $53,000 a year, but I'm spending almost $10,000 a year, about $950 a month, or a little bit less than that, every month on just interest on the credit card bill. And this has been going on for decades, to be honest with you. That's why I have a black and white picture of a couple struggling to make their budget here. How about the single parent here? She's struggling. How am I going to make ends meet? Cover my expenses, put food on the table, roof over the head of our, her children or whatever. And it doesn't matter if you're maybe you're a single senior citizen and you're having to pick, food over medicine. Or whatever. But we all have family budgets, and some say, well, you can't compare the family budget towards the federal budget. It's apples and oranges. All right. I'll give it that one to you as an economist, from one economist to another. I'll give that to you. But you know what? Still, overspending means that you're a debt slave. It's really what it comes down to. But the difference is they have that magical printing money machine and we don't have that.
14 of them.
Right. The closest thing we have is really a credit card, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm going to say and argue that the government's budget is evil. It's not just bad management, and it's not just current administration. It goes way back to Congress, before Congress, after Congress, after Congress. Way back before we were born, Lisa, was we always had a bad management problem when it came to handling fiscal matters with the federal level. And I would say that it's not just bad management, it's actually immoral, because we say it's a representative government and that they are representing us. So therefore we're approving these expenditures. I kind of argue about that, but ultimately it's repressive. And because why? We all become the debt slaves. We have to, if we wanted to balance the budget, we're going to have to pay down that debt in other words, to lower the interest payments, so we can have more money to go towards other services that we expect from our federal government. If we want to go down that road, I'm still arguing we need to purge more and more and more.
Right.
So then it comes down to the central bank is evil. And is one above the other? Is the U.S. government above the central bank? Is the central bank above the federal government? Or are central banks above all of them? Let's not even go there. Let's just recognize that the Federal Reserve in our central bank, the U.S., we all know it's not federal. There are no reserves, and it's really just a den of thieves. And what they're doing is they're creating inflation. They're printing money through debt, and that inflation is theft, no matter how you slice it. So we have tax theft, we have inflation theft, and tax theft comes in all forms and shapes and manners, and inflation theft just is ongoing and ongoing. They really have control of the magic money printing machine. Print to grow
And it
bird.
hurts the least of these. The inflation is the most cruel taxation or theft.
Right. So in 1913, our Congress and the president signed into law the Federal Reserve Act and created this monstrosity, this monster, this beast. And so was the government evil when it did that act by duplicating itself and creating a larger evil beast, knowingly or unknowingly? Either way, it's evil and it's wrong and it should be done away with. In my opinion, it should be purged. Hence the name Purge Department rather than Doge. I want to go bigger on that. So I'm introducing, there you go, from Doge to Purge. Free at last, Lisa. we need to create this department and start cutting all these agencies and cutting it down to the bare minimum. Like we talked before the show tonight, we talked about, would you say it was the three things? It was the three things of authority or government.
Yeah. So I was watching the classical conversations, the curriculum that I use that in our community to teach canon. They did an interview on the Sean Ryan show, and Lee Borton, the mom that started the classical conversations, and her son were interviewing with him, and she said, you have to get out of this, school mindset and where like you ask permission from the government all the time. And she said in the Bible, it talks about like through, not in one place in the Bible, but through multiple stories, that there's three like authorities, and the way they look at it as that, the man is the authority over the family, and then the church or the community is there to provide, support and resources for the individuals or the family, anything that the family or can't, needs help with.
Mm-hmm.
And then the government is only there to punish bad guys, to be the authority for like, if someone's like rights are infringed or they harm another individual. They're not there to provide if somebody, because what the discussion was there's these not tariffs. I have tariffs on the brain. These what are they called? Vouchers for homeschooling.
Oh, yeah,
And our community is refusing them because with the cheese, you get the trap,
that's right.
and we don't want those strings on us, because then they start telling you, things like I was sharing with you right before we went on, that Texas is trying to pass a law saying that you're allowed to raise your child as long as it doesn't infringe on any government, something that's good to do with government. I'll share the language on it later, but it's just it's crazy. But no father should ask permission from the government on how to raise their child. No
Exactly.
parents should be asking the government permission on how to raise your child. And now they're even talking about, well, we're going to make sure you're credentialed to raise your child. No, God picked you to be your child's parent. You make the choices for your child. This is
Right.
just like in the medical system. When I went through with Mia, I'd always been very involved with all the kids' heart stuff, and the cardiology groups always been, really wanted my input on how the kids were doing, how they were responding to different medicines, all this kind of stuff. The minute we got into the cancer world, they told me that they were going to have a meeting and they would be deciding her care and they would let me know. And I said, well, I'll be at the meeting. And they're like, oh, you can't be in there, because we discuss other patients. And I said, well, you're not doing anything to my child. And they threatened to call DHS on me and have her removed from me. And I came across that bed at that lady and I said, I tell you what, I said, you call DHS and I'll have them walking my ass out of this hospital, and I'll have anyway, I
Yeah.
didn't use very nice words and I was very upset. But that's in those kind of culture situations, in those authority situations, they think that they can demand these things or tell you how they're going to treat your child, or that they have it's this false authority.
Right.
And that's what
Also,
we have to push back on that.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's kind of where, like I was saying, boy, there's so much there to unpack, Lisa, but you're absolutely right. When we're handing over our rights, our decisions, our freedom to decide, we're handing over our free will of choice in various matters to the state, irregardless if it's a state level, a county, city level, or if it's the federal level. And um, I'm presenting tonight to tell you that, or to tell folks, in my opinion, and who am I, just a guy on the internet, like I like to say, and others say, that Doge, I commend it. I commend them what they're doing, but the cuts aren't big enough. They're not deep enough, and there's just a long history of abuse that is far in excess of what cuts can do to mend it or fix it. The Gosh, you could almost name any three-letter agency or four-letter agency, I don't care, in the federal government, and not only do you see excess, but you see that these bureaucrats think that they know what's best for you and your family or the country as a whole, and they don't. They're certainly not experts, and the Supreme Court ruled on that as well with the Chevron doctrine, that they're not the experts. So the laws weren't written with enough detail in them, so the agencies took it upon themselves to create the regulations and the policies far beyond what they should. So now you have overreach. So you gotta cut it all out. It's a cancer. And so Doge, I commend Elon and Trump on the whole Doge campaign and what they're uncovering. And I know they're making these cuts. The money has already been allocated to these departments. So the cuts really aren't going to be seen until the next budget, even though maybe a lot of the money won't be spent. So there's a little bit of trickery going on there because that's just the nature of budgets. We all heard the stories. If you don't spend it, well, we got to hurry up and spend it
Right.
before the fiscal year. Otherwise, I'll cut it from our budget, you know. So the money's already been allocated to be spent, even though these departments have been cut. So we'll see. We'll see how that all plays out during the fiscal year fight. But let's hope that the negative press doesn't turn around and get people riled up on the other side, because people aren't upset with the people who have overspent. They're upset with the people who are making the cuts. And so what if
They're
your
being
Congress
misled.
flips in 2 years, or it's less than 2 years, a year from and a half from now, when with the new midterms, what happens then? So Doge, again, in my opinion, it just doesn't go far enough. I don't think Doge can cut 50% of the total expenditures. And even if it cuts 50% of the expenditures, we're not going to be paying down enough of the principal on the debt. So it's kind of unfixable in many ways. And I just don't want bureaucrats to make those decisions anymore. I want to purge them. I want to end it. They're useless, and it's repressive, and it's excess. That's what PURGE stands for. Purge, useless, and repressive government excess. Purge it. And a great purge would be the Federal Reserve. And you know what? They can take the debt when we purge them.
Right.
And maybe there's some of that debt that we will acknowledge and accept, but the most of it would be the federal bank, the central banks. They need to take it on the chin and go back to sound money. But I go even further, to be honest with you, and I just see it even within the state of Texas. Texas keeps talking about we need to exit the federal system, and each state was supposed to be an experiment. Well, great. That was wonderful when it was truly maybe an experiment, but now they all bow down to the feds, and we're really not a federalist country anymore. We have this behemoth in DC. And so when the state of Texas recently did this budget, and they gave everyone, less than 18 hours to read it, the budget, the 2-year budget, less than 18 hours to read it. Who knows what's in that budget?
Yeah.
And it's so what you've done is they've just taken the playbook out of the feds, is what the state, capital did, that legislature. And it's not just Texas, it's many states have the same problem. And so what does that tell you? It's not just bad management, it's immoral. And it needs to be
it's unconstitutional, and it's breach of contract. They broke the contract with the people, and so I would think that you have every right to say breach of contract, you're fired. And
right.
And a lot of these agencies, they are not part of our Constitution. They are charters, and so all you do is defund them, and they can keep working there for free if they want, but they have no authority. That's been proven under the Chevron, like you said, and they are defunded completely. Mm-hmm. And like Johnny Litecoin says, they can make all the rules for typewriters they want, but we're not using that anymore, and we stop obeying.
It's that rules on typewriter. It's just what I did in that other episode. But you know what? Imagine, just Lisa and everyone in the chat, imagine if a giant sinkhole opened up in DC and just sucked everything down. We would still go on our merry way.
Yeah.
We would still be able to keep marching on, doing what we do. And the states would pick up the slack, and that's what would happen. And you know what, for like Crypto Nana says, and central banking globally. Yeah, imagine if I don't know, some kind of swamp monster sucked in all the central banks and the federal governments. Boom, they would be gone, and we would still march along. We would continue on. And you know what? Who knows? It might prevent another war from happening, or the threats of war, the rumors of war. Because certainly couldn't print their way out of it. if we had a truly representative government, um, and we didn't have the CIA controlling the airways, like NBC, ABC, and CBS and CNN. Imagine back in the day, pre-Iraq. I think if we had alternative news media back then, maybe we would have been able to stop the Iraq War. Maybe we wouldn't have gone in after weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
So there's hope. There's hope that we can bring about a purge. And but is it? But see, for me now, I'm thinking, okay, look what just happened in my state here in Texas. Well, I guess I need to purge Austin as well. So when does it stop? I have the right of self-determination. I should be able to pick my leaders. That's what I was an inalienable right to choose how I want to be ruled or governed, or choose not to be ruled or governed. I have an individual. I have those rights. So long
they should never be your leaders. They should be your servants. They should be our. That's once again, we've got so much indoctrination from our public schools and all of that, and that that the fact that we all know that they make what is $147,000 a year or whatever, and they live in mansions, and no one is banging on their door or at their door with the sheriff saying, turn over your bank statements. Well, or we're not primarying them every time that they're up. Or if we do, why do they keep getting back in? The fact that we just stick our hand down our pants and watch football every Sunday and are okay with it, that's the problem.
That's exactly it. The money that they're putting in their pockets in Washington is perfectly legal because they voted it in that way. And what it is simply as if they raise $1 billion or whatever the amount is, $100 million for their campaign, and they only spent 90 million of it. Well, the difference of 90 million to 100 million is 10 million. They could put 10 million in their pocket. So that's how they do it, Lisa. They don't spend their entire campaign funds for their next run, and that's how they make their money. Plus, then they parlay that into having insider information on what stocks to buy, before the general public knows.
Yeah,
and that's how it really works.
Well, and I was watching this. I've seen it a couple times now in the past couple days, but that 10% of Americans, I guess it was Scott Bessent, said in an interview, I think with Tucker Carlson, that 10% of Americans own 80% of the stock market, and that the next 40% is owned by, I don't know, some very small number, but that like the majority of Americans own debt.
Yes.
And that is what needs help and needs to be corrected. And so it's not that, if the stock market, everybody was worried about this Black Monday and whatever, and it kicked off and there was all this panic. And then of course it ends on a green, because it's all fake and they can manipulate it. And that's what they do to, take care of each other. But that's their playground. That's not for the majority of us. And so then I did see something, and I don't know how this plays in, but I think it was Peter Schiff said, because today Trump said, well, if China's not going to do the tariffs, then that's on China to fix it. I guess China's supposed to come to the table. And Peter Schiff said, well, what China should do then is dump all the treasuries and inflate the yuan, I think he said.
Yes.
And that would destroy the US dollar and cause us to go into hyperinflation. And it would allow China to be able to buy all the stuff that they wanted.
Yeah, that's possible. That's very possible. When all those dollars come racing back to inside the US, it creates a big problem for us because it's too many dollars being consolidated within our border. And we did that show on the Mar-a-Lago Accords, and quite honestly, Lisa, when we did that show, it we talked about tariffs, and we talked about
Mm.
exactly what you just described with China. And it's public knowledge. It was posted in, printed and published in November of last year, and it's called the Mar-a-Lago Accords, and what the plan is. And that means it's going to be a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. Now, since we've done that show and I've done a little bit more research, we know what it's like at McDonald's. You go to McDonald's now, and you see the kiosk. They have less people that can I take your order? Can I take your order? What would you like tonight? What would you like today? When you go inside, it's a kiosk and you push the button, right? And it's like a robot. You're doing the putting in the order. So robotics is going to play a role in the rebuilding of new factories. More and more robotics that we've not accustomed to seeing, and we're right on the cusp, right on the edge of those things exploding. So far to the point that some people are going to have them to be able to mow their lawn or do other things, do the dishes, vacuum, clean the house, whatever. That's how close we are, the Jetsons life, so to speak. We're very close to that. And so a lot of the jobs just aren't going to come back for, say, the automakers, because they're going to be able to do more and more robotics. And I think that's something we're going to have to think about. I don't know if the answer is UBI. I don't know. But
I hate the idea of that.
Yeah, I hate the idea of it as well.
Moralizes the community,
It's a great society. What Johnson just did, it's the same damn thing. So which brings us to CBDCs. So who knows what that future holds? I don't want to be Debbie Downer here.
If they were to dump the treasuries, but then the Fed had to eat them, and that destroys the Fed, and it implodes.
Well, no, it destroys all of your big corporations, in which then they have to lay off people, and even the small mom and pop stores start hurting. Inflation rate, we go into deflation, where some items are going to be inflationary and other items are going to be deflationary. And it'll be the wrong ones that we want, the other way around. And it's going to create an uglier situation than you can even imagine right now.
For the Fed note, though, but not for state, if the states start using their own state treasuries, like the gold-backed state treasury dollars or something.
Yeah, I would hope that the states would take that kind of aggressive action. I wouldn't even place a bet on my governor, Abbott, who happens to be a Republican, but also a WEFer. Well, he's not going to do anything like that. Nor are the rhinos in Texas going to push for that. So I have little hope in Texas, even though it's a red state, of that kind of taking place. But ultimately, what's going to happen is, in my opinion, for what it's worth, we're going to see, if that were to come into play, the Federal Reserve is not going to take it on the chin. It's just like a company that, when their costs go up, they pass it on to their end consumer, even if they lose sales, because they can't absorb it anyway. They don't have the money to absorb it. And a lot of these companies are zombie companies anyway. So we're going to do just the same thing. When I was with an export company, we exported to Mexico. When Mexico increased the tariff on one of our products, then what we did was we sold less of them, and we increased the cost, because we couldn't absorb it. If we had a 1.5-2% profit margin, net profit, we couldn't absorb a 10, 20, 25% hit. There's no way.
You keep your margin the same, and
that's right. So it has to get passed on to the end consumer. Well, the Federal Reserve is going to do just the same thing. They're not going to take it on the chin. They're going to raise the interest rates or do whatever they have to. And they're not going to play nice. The federal government isn't going to do what's in the best interest of the citizenry. No, they're evil. We've just determined that.
Well, but if they're a private entity, why couldn't you break the contract with them as well? Because right now it's a contract that we use that Fed note for exchange. And
Well, if we were even close to that, Lisa, there would be a lot of people lining up with Massey saying, yeah, let's end the Fed. And that would be something that would be probably in the news all day long. And what it would mean, and start planning. We would have, Trump talking about, I'm going to create a commission to start talking about how we're going to end this thing. And it would be out in the open for more discussion, that kind of thing. But then the other Federal Reserves around the world, the other central banks, are going to dive in and jump in to help this Federal Reserve and save this Federal Reserve. They're not going to give up that control very easily. And I would argue that the Intel superstate might have already done their little extortion and bribery deeds decades ago and took over the central banks. So just like the Intel superstate was mafia / CIA, took out JFK, you don't think that they couldn't take out, like they've probably take control of our DOD? I think they could probably have done a bank run, shall we say, and just went in through the normal doors and just say, hey, by the way, we got these pictures and we have this extortion plan we're going to release, or we're just going to take you out or take out your family member until you concede. And so I think a gun and a like Skullcap. What does he say here? I think the CIA has a lot more power, or shall we say, in the Intel superstate. And when I say Intel superstate, that encompasses and includes the military-industrial complex. Just heard it today. Glenn Beck talking. It's happened multiple times when he's gone to D.C. and he's gone to see a congressperson or senator or whatever, and they say, let's take a walk. Don't bring any electronics. You don't have an Apple Watch, do you? Because CIA is listening and we've been threatened. And so they take a walk outside with no electronics to have a conversation. That's what's been happening for years and years and years in DC. So the Intel superstate is much more powerful than we probably give them credit for.
Yeah.
And who's to say that they don't control the banks?
What's that?
Who's to say that the Intel superstate doesn't control the banks?
Well, they might. The military took over a long time ago. In 2017, when I read that NDAA, that was the largest transfer of military property in the history. And I mean, they were selling bases in Hawaii. They were moving a lot of the Army into the Army's property into the Navy, and all of this just recently. And in it, they were talking about disclosure of the poisons in the food and the water, and that it would be disclosed to the public. They also said that what typically would be a military trial, and usually military trials are not available to the public or anything, but they were going to make the sexual assault trials public, and they were going to assign like JAGs, but they were going to use civilian attorneys, and I can't remember if it was judges too, so that the public would be able to see these trials. Well, while everybody's worried about the Epstein list and all this and thinking that Pam Bondi's doing nothing, if you go to the DOJ YouTube, you can see what just happened. And they just took out the most dangerous MS-13 gang member. There was also recently an Interpol thing. They busted over 2 million people on a child sex trafficking ring. Mm-hmm. There was also there were 2 more busts, one in Florida, one somewhere else. And gang, the R word with babies. Horrible, horrible things. And they are wrapping this stuff up, but they are doing it publicly. And when they interview, they call her general. And so I think some of this is happening. It's got to happen in the order that it's got to happen in. They are telling the public, but it's not what we thought was going to happen. I mean, I don't have military experience. Things happen. You have some experience in the
Not
military.
in the military, just family members.
Yeah, with family members. But there's the way things happen is not the way we do in civilian life. And so I think it's not, we're maybe a lot of us don't recognize what's happening, or it's not happening in the way that we thought it would happen. But I believe that it is happening.
Lisa, I really hope that that's true. If it happened in 2017, I wonder why Millie wasn't already strung up, or why he's still collecting a nice paycheck.
Because it's part of the movie. I believe he is. I believe he was taken out. I mean, they're now showing, they're slowing down the video of, when Hillary got picked up on 9/11 of 2016. And now you can see her, that she was handcuffed clearly when they shoved her in the van. She didn't have heat stroke. And then one of the doubles came out afterwards. I mean, they are starting to roll out and let people find.
I hope so. Because it goes deep.
But I think that's
deep and vast and wide.
Yeah, but I think that's part of that. Like, it's out there. Some people are going to find it. Some people aren't, or they're going to eventually find it. I think that was part of the strategy with rolling out the JFK files on the same day that they did the MK Ultra. That would horrify people to know that our military, what they were doing to children, that they were kidnapping and MK Ultraing children in our own country.
Horrible. Still goes on by our CIA.
Eugenic practices.
So yeah, it's gosh, the stories of the evil deeds of the government are endless. And purge it. Yeah,
I'm with you. I am with you. Yeah.
Oh gosh. So how's our chat? How's everybody in the chat today?
We have so many good people in the chat.
Don't we? Boy, amazing.
Skullcap's in there, Nana's in there, Jim's in there. The Rand is here.
Nice.
Mark Weems is here. Legacy Zach, our friend from WBRT, is here.
All right. I like Great Gazoo. He's so hilarious.
Great Gazoo is here.
He's hilarious. Hey, I mentioned the Jetsons today. Wasn't the Great Gazoo on the Jetsons too? Or no, he was on the Flintstones.
I think Great Gazoo was on the Jetsons too. Wasn't he one of those characters that would pop into multiple shows?
That's what I thought. I don't know.
JB Rance, our friend from Boston, is here.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Gazoo was the first man.
Lisa, let's purge it. Doge doesn't go far enough.
It's time.
Purge it.
I'm with you. All right, guys. Well, you heard it here. If you were ready for the purge, leave us a message and definitely purge with us. All right. We'll see you guys soon. Take care.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you.